Emma thought she was surprising Daniel with a simple visit, but the moment she stepped onto his flight, she uncovered a locked briefcase, cryptic messages, and a shadowy stranger watching their every move. Secrets that would shatter everything she believed about the man she loved. What was Daniel hiding, and how far would he go to protect a dark secret that could destroy them both? Emma's heart was pounding with excitement as she stood in the bustling airport terminal, clutching her ticket tightly. She had been planning this surprise for weeks, keeping it a secret even from her closest friends. Daniel, her boyfriend, was a pilot who flew all over the country, always caught up in his busy schedule. Their relationship was strong, but long distance meant they barely saw each other. Emma wanted to change that, even if just for a weekend. She remembered how Daniel had casually mentioned his next flight, an overnight journey from New York to Seattle. It was a rare chance to be on the same plane with him, to sit beside him and finally share moments in person rather than through phone calls and video chats. Emma's mind raced with excitement and nerves. She had booked a seat in secret, carefully choosing a spot near the cockpit where Daniel usually stayed during flights. She pictured the look on his face when he saw her, imagining his surprise and happiness. As Emma walked toward the gate, her eyes darted around nervously, half hoping Daniel would suddenly appear, yet also fearing what she might discover. Something about this trip felt different, although she couldn't quite place it. Daniel had been more distracted in recent days, often disappearing without explanation and answering calls in hushed tones. She'd shrugged it off, telling herself pilots had stressful lives. But deep down, a small knot of worry twisted inside her. Was she just imagining things? The airport was filled with the usual hum of travelers, families rushing to catch flights, business people tapping on laptops, children laughing and crying. Emma felt a strange contrast between the normal chaos around her and the unease growing within. She tried to focus on her plan. She had rehearsed how to act when Daniel first saw her. A smile, a quick hug, and then the joy of sharing stories on the plane. It should have been simple. Her boarding call echoed through the terminal, pulling her from her thoughts. She stood in line, her pulse quickening, as the gate agent scanned her ticket and handed her the boarding pass. "Have a nice flight," the agent said without looking up. Emma forced a smile and stepped onto the jet bridge, the metal walls narrowing around her like a tunnel leading into the unknown. Inside the plane, the cold air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals mixed with recycled cabin air. Emma's eyes searched the rows of seats for Daniel. She spotted him in his uniform near the cockpit, adjusting his headset. His face was serious, almost tense. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if she should reveal herself right away or wait until the plane took off. As she settled into her seat, Emma noticed Daniel's unusual behavior. He kept glancing nervously at his phone, typing quick messages with a furrowed brow. It wasn't like him to be so distracted during pre-flight checks. She tried to tell herself it was just stress, but a cold shiver ran down her spine. A man seated a few rows ahead caught her attention. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket and glasses, but there was something unsettling about him. The way he watched Daniel with sharp, calculating eyes made Emma uneasy. She tried to focus on the safety instructions being given by the flight attendants, but her mind kept drifting back to the mysterious passenger and Daniel's restless demeanor. As the plane began to taxi, Emma's excitement mingled with growing curiosity and a hint of fear. Why was Daniel so tense? Who was that man watching him so closely? And what secret was hidden behind Daniel's calm, professional smile? Emma pressed her hand against the window, watching the runway lights blur past as the plane lifted into the night sky. She was about to find out that her surprise was just the beginning of a journey far more complicated and dangerous than she ever imagined. The hum of the engines filled the cabin as the plane soared higher into the night sky. Emma sat quietly, trying to steady her racing thoughts. She glanced toward Daniel again, who remained near the cockpit, moving with a practiced calm that didn't quite match the tension she sensed beneath the surface. His eyes flickered to his phone every few minutes, fingers tapping furiously. It was as if he was waiting for something or someone. Emma tried to distract herself by looking around the cabin, but her gaze kept drifting back to a man sitting several rows ahead. He was unlike any other passenger. His dark jacket seemed oddly out of place on this routine flight, and his eyes never left Daniel. The man's sharp jawline and cold expression gave him an air of quiet menace. Every now and then he would shift in his seat, his posture stiff, as if preparing to spring into action at any moment. Emma felt a chill creep down her spine. Why was he so fixated on Daniel? Trying to appear casual, Emma studied the man more closely. There was something familiar in the way he observed Daniel, something professional, almost like surveillance. But who was he? A plainclothes security officer, or someone far more dangerous? The uncertainty gnawed at her. The flight attendants moved through the aisle, checking on passengers with polite smiles. But Emma noticed Daniel's demeanor didn't soften even in their presence. His hands trembled slightly when he returned his phone to his pocket after a hurried glance. Emma's curiosity deepened into worry. Was Daniel hiding something? And if so, was this mysterious passenger connected to it? As the hours passed, the plane cut through thick clouds, and the dim cabin lights cast shadows that made faces appear ghostly. Emma felt the weight of silence pressing down, broken only by the soft murmur of the engines and the occasional rustle of pages or whispers from other travelers. It was as if the very air inside the plane held a secret it was reluctant to reveal. Emma tried to remember every detail she had overlooked before boarding. There had been no mention of any unusual meetings or plans from Daniel. Yet now, on this flight, everything seemed to point to something hidden beneath the surface. The man ahead, Daniel's restless glances, and the locked briefcase she had glimpsed earlier in his bag during a brief moment by the cockpit. All of it felt like pieces of a puzzle she was only beginning to see. Suddenly, a jolt shook the plane as it hit turbulence. Passengers gripped their armrests, eyes wide with alarm. Emma's heart pounded in rhythm with the shaking aircraft. She looked up at Daniel's direction, hoping to catch a reassuring sign, but his face was unreadable. He was focused, tense, like a man bracing for impact not just from the storm outside, but from something far more dangerous. Emma's mind raced. What if the turbulence was more than just weather? Could it be a signal, an alarm of sorts? She scanned the cabin again, and the dark-jacketed man's eyes met hers briefly. For a split second, Emma felt the unmistakable chill of being watched. He didn't look away. Instead, he nodded ever so slightly, almost imperceptibly. Was that a warning or a threat? The plane steadied, and murmurs of relief spread among the passengers, but Emma couldn't shake the unease settling deep inside her. Her surprise trip was no longer just about love and reunion. It had become a silent battle between secrets and shadows. As the flight progressed, Emma's gaze fell once again on Daniel's locked briefcase resting on the floor beside his seat. She remembered how tightly he had clutched it moments before boarding. What was inside that briefcase that made him so protective? Was it tied to the man watching him? The thought sent a ripple of dread through her. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma knew she couldn't wait until they landed. The mystery was unfolding right here, mid-flight, and every minute brought her closer to a revelation she might not be ready for. She tightened her grip on her purse, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead, knowing that this journey would reveal far more than just a surprise visit. The night stretched on, cloaking the plane in darkness, but Emma's mind was wide awake, racing with questions that begged for answers. The man in the dark jacket, the secretive pilot, and the locked briefcase. None of it was random. Something was lurking beneath the surface, and Emma was about to find out just how deep the darkness went. As the plane touched down at the layover airport, a sense of restless anticipation gripped Emma. The brief stop was her chance, not just to stretch her legs, but to unravel a mystery that had been gnawing at her since she boarded. Daniel was busy speaking quietly with a colleague near the cockpit, and the moment felt right to act on the nagging curiosity that refused to let go. With her heart thumping in her chest, Emma slipped out of her seat, careful not to draw attention. The cabin was dimly lit, passengers still settled in, some dozing lightly, others quietly chatting. She moved slowly toward the front of the plane, each step measured, nerves tightening like a coil ready to snap. She wasn't sure what she hoped to find, only that the locked briefcase in Daniel's bag haunted her thoughts. What could be inside that demanded such secrecy? Her eyes scanned the small space near the cockpit where Daniel had left his bag resting against the wall. The briefcase was unmistakable, black, sturdy, and firmly locked. Emma crouched down, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached out. She ran her hand over the cool leather, tracing the edges. The lock was simple but secure, giving no hint of what secrets it held. Glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one was watching, Emma searched for something to open it. Her fingers fumbled with the small key Daniel always wore on a chain around his neck, but the key wasn't there. Where had it gone? Panic flickered briefly before she pushed it down. She couldn't let fear stop her now. Her mind raced with questions. Why would Daniel carry this briefcase on the plane if it was empty or harmless? And why had he been so guarded, checking his phone constantly, avoiding her eyes? Emma's curiosity morphed into a gnawing suspicion. The man watching Daniel so closely earlier, could he be after what was inside the briefcase? Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the aisle, and Emma froze. A flight attendant passed by, her face kind but distracted. Emma quickly straightened up, sliding back into her seat just as Daniel returned. His eyes met hers briefly, a flicker of something, was it warning, passing between them. Emma swallowed hard but said nothing, afraid to reveal the storm brewing inside her. Back in her seat, Emma's gaze locked onto Daniel. He seemed lost in thought, fingers drumming nervously on the armrest. Her eyes then drifted back to the briefcase, tucked securely under the seat. It was a symbol of the distance now stretching between them, a barrier she didn't understand but desperately wanted to break. The plane's engines roared to life again, ready for takeoff, but Emma's mind was already racing ahead. What if the briefcase contained more than just papers or valuables? Could it be tied to something dangerous? She remembered the strange messages she had glimpsed on Daniel's phone. The cryptic conversations with someone named V. Who was this person, and how did they connect to the locked case? Emma's breath caught as the plane lifted into the sky once more. The night outside was thick with clouds, shadows stretching like dark fingers across the cabin walls. She felt the weight of the unknown pressing down, suffocating in its intensity. The briefcase wasn't just a container, it was a gateway to secrets Daniel had hidden from her, secrets that now threatened to unravel everything. Minutes stretched like hours as Emma wrestled with the urge to pry open the briefcase. But fear held her back. What if opening it brought danger, not just to Daniel but to herself? Was she ready to face whatever truth waited inside? The flight continued, the low hum of engines masking the storm of thoughts in Emma's mind. She felt trapped between love and suspicion, between hope and dread. Her surprise trip had started as a dream but was fast becoming a nightmare. Then, as if answering her silent question, Daniel shifted in his seat and glanced toward her. His eyes held a shadow of sadness, mixed with something else, regret. Emma's pulse quickened. Was this the moment the secret would finally reveal itself, or was there still a deeper darkness waiting to emerge? Emma gripped her purse tightly, feeling the cold metal of her phone beneath her fingers. She was caught in a web of mystery, and the next move could change everything. The briefcase sat just out of reach, locked tight like the truth Daniel was hiding, and Emma knew, without a doubt, that she was about to cross a line from which there was no turning back. The dim glow of the cabin lights barely lit the small space around Emma as she sat quietly, trying to steady her shaking hands. Daniel had stepped away to the restroom, leaving his phone briefly unattended on the seat beside her. It was a risk, but the temptation was too strong to ignore. She had to know, had to understand the pieces of the puzzle swirling around her. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked his phone with the simple swipe he'd allowed her in the past. The screen lit up, revealing a barrage of messages she hadn't seen before. Most were routine, check-ins from airline staff, updates from colleagues, But then there were the texts from a mysterious contact saved only as V. The messages from V were different, coded, urgent, and alarming. Emma's eyes darted across the screen as she read fragments of conversations. The package must be secured before the next flight. One message read. Another said, "No mistakes this time. The shipment can't be traced." There was talk of meetings in isolated locations and references to delivery and payment. The words felt like a code from another world, one that Daniel had never mentioned, one Emma had never imagined he was part of. Her mind reeled. What was this package? Was it connected to the locked briefcase she had seen earlier? The pieces were fitting together, but the picture was darker than she had feared. Daniel wasn't just a pilot flying passengers from city to city. There was a secret life, one filled with shadowy deals and dangerous players. Emma's heart pounded louder with each message she read. The urgency in the texts suggested more than just smuggling or small-time crime. It hinted at something bigger, something that could ruin lives or worse. She could almost hear the danger creeping closer, wrapping around Daniel's world like a tightening noose. As she scrolled further, a recent message caught her eye. "Meet me tonight. We need to settle this before the next leg. No exceptions." It was clear Daniel was under pressure, trapped in something that he couldn't escape. Emma felt a surge of fear. What if this secret caught up with them on the flight? What if her surprise was a trap? The phone buzzed suddenly, startling her. It was a new message from V. Emma glanced at it quickly. "Are you alone? Be careful." The warning sent a cold wave of dread through her. Someone knew she was snooping, or worse, someone was watching Daniel and by extension her. Emma hurried to lock the phone and slip it back into Daniel's bag just as he returned. His expression was calm, but Emma caught the flicker of tension beneath the surface, the kind she had seen all evening. He settled into his seat beside her, unaware of the storm inside her. For a moment the two of them sat side by side, connected by years of love but now separated by secrets. Emma's mind raced with questions. Who was V? What was the package? And how deep was Daniel's involvement in this dangerous game? The plane's gentle vibrations and the quiet hum of the engines seemed to mock her unease. Emma forced herself to focus on the flight, but the words on the screen haunted her. The coded messages, the urgency, the warnings. It was like stepping into a world she wasn't prepared for, a world that threatened everything she believed about Daniel. Her surprise trip had turned into a quest for truth, and with every second that passed, the darkness surrounding Daniel grew thicker. Emma knew there was no turning back now. The secret had been uncovered, and the consequences would follow her through the night sky. She stole one last glance at Daniel, wondering if he sensed the change between them. The man she loved was no longer just the pilot she knew. He was a man hiding a dangerous secret, and Emma was caught in the middle. The plane soared on through the night, carrying them both toward a future shadowed by uncertainty. And as the miles stretched beneath them, Emma realized this flight was more than a journey across the country. It was a journey into a hidden world from which there might be no escape. The morning sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon when Emma quietly slipped out of the small hotel room where they were staying during the layover. She told herself she needed fresh air, but in truth, her mind was consumed by a single urgent thought. She had to follow Daniel. The messages, the briefcase, the strange man on the plane, it all pointed to something dark lurking beneath the surface, and Emma couldn't ignore it any longer. Her steps were cautious as she moved through the quiet streets, the chill of dawn wrapping around her like a shroud. She kept to the shadows, avoiding the few early risers starting their day. Every sound seemed amplified. The distant bark of a dog, the crunch of gravel under her shoes. Her heart beat faster, both from fear and determination. She didn't know where Daniel was going, but she had to find out. A few blocks away, Emma saw him. Daniel was walking with purpose, his face serious, eyes scanning the surroundings, as if expecting trouble at any moment. He carried the same briefcase from the plane, the locked container she had tried and failed to open. Emma's breath caught. This was no ordinary business trip. Daniel's path led to the edge of town, where a large nondescript warehouse stood. The building was old and weathered, its metal siding rusted and stained. Emma's instinct screamed caution, but curiosity pushed her closer. She ducked behind a parked car and watched as Daniel approached the heavy steel door. The door creaked open, revealing a shadowed interior. Emma strained to see inside. A figure emerged from the darkness. A tall man wearing a dark hoodie, his face hidden in shadows. Emma's blood ran cold. This had to be V, the mysterious contact from the messages. The man's presence confirmed that Daniel was deeply involved in something dangerous. The two exchanged the briefcase silently, their movements quick and tense. Emma noticed the subtle exchange of a thick cleflick. Likely cash slipped from one hand to the other. The weight of the situation hit her like a blow. Daniel wasn't just carrying secrets. He was part of a hidden world of deals and threats. Emma's breath caught as the man glanced toward the street. For a moment, their eyes seemed to lock, and Emma ducked instinctively, heart pounding in her ears. Had she been seen? Panic surged through her, but she stayed still, praying to remain unnoticed. The meeting ended quickly, the men parting ways without a word. Daniel disappeared back into the shadows of the warehouse, and the figure in the hoodie melted into the early morning mist. Emma waited several minutes, watching the door close before she moved away, her mind spinning. What was in that briefcase? Why the secrecy and danger? The envelope, the coded messages, all pointed to a life Daniel had hidden from her. But why now? And what was at stake? As Emma retraced her steps back to the hotel, she felt a mix of fear and resolve. She knew this was no longer just about surprise or love. She had stumbled into a world of crime and deceit, and there was no turning back. Back in the safety of her room, Emma stared out the window, the warehouse fading into the distance. She realized that Daniel's carefully constructed life was built on lies and secrets. The man she thought she knew was someone else entirely. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't yet answer. Was Daniel a victim trapped by his past, or a willing participant in something dangerous? And how far would he go to protect the secret he carried in that locked briefcase? Emma felt a cold determination settle over her. She would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The surprise trip she had planned had turned into a silent battle for answers, and for survival. Outside, the city awakened, unaware of the dark shadows stretching just beneath its surface. Emma knew the real journey was only beginning. The next leg of the flight began under a heavy, gray sky, the plane slicing through thick clouds that hid the world below in mist and shadow. Emma sat by the window, her thoughts swirling in a storm as turbulent as the weather outside. The morning's revelation haunted her. Daniel's secret meeting at the warehouse, exchange of the briefcase, the mysterious man in the hoodie. Every detail burned in her mind, refusing to fade. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The memory of the man's glance, sharp and knowing, echoed in her mind. Had he spotted her? Was someone aware of her growing suspicion? Emma's pulse quickened at the thought. This was no longer just about uncovering Daniel's secret. It was about survival. Daniel remained distant, his usual warmth replaced by a tense silence. He avoided her gaze, eyes fixed on the small screen of his phone, or the passing clouds outside the window. Emma studied him carefully, searching for any sign of the man she once knew beneath the hard mask, but all she saw was a man burdened by shadows he refused to share. The locked briefcase sat beneath the seat, just out of reach. Emma's fingers twitched, aching grasp it again to pry open the mystery that had taken over her life. But something stopped her, a silent warning whispered by instinct. This secret was dangerous, more than she had ever imagined. Midway through the flight, a sudden commotion stirred the cabin. A man in a dark jacket, the same unsettling stranger Emma had noticed earlier, stood and moved toward the front. Passengers shifted uneasily as he approached Daniel's seat, his eyes cold and unyielding. Emma's breath hitched, the tension in the air thickened. as if the very walls of the plane held their breath. The man leaned close to Daniel, speaking in low, urgent tones. Emma couldn't hear the words, but the expressions on their faces told the story: fear, anger, and something darker still. Daniel's hands clenched the armrests, knuckles white as the man's gaze swept the cabin before returning to Daniel. Emma's heart hammered. Was this confrontation about the briefcase? Was the man or someone even more dangerous? She watched as Daniel's face tightened, a flicker of defiance sparking in his eyes, but then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. The stranger stepped back, eyes flickering briefly toward Emma. That same chilling glance she had felt before. It was a silent warning, or a threat. Emma shrank in her seat, heart pounding, realizing she had crossed an invisible line. The plane shuddered as it encountered turbulence, the cabin lights flickering briefly. Passengers murmured uneasily, and Emma's mind raced. What was Daniel caught up in? Who was this man? And what would happen when they landed? As the plane leveled out, Daniel rose and moved toward the rear. Emma's curiosity surged again, and she followed, careful to stay hidden behind other passengers. Near the galley, Daniel met another figure, a woman with sharp eyes and an icy smile. Emma recognized her immediately from the airport lounge, where she had seen her earlier, watching Daniel closely. The woman handed Daniel an envelope, thick and heavy. Emma's breath caught. This was no casual exchange. There was weight here, danger, money, secrets. Daniel pocketed the envelope and glanced around nervously. Emma's heart twisted. The web of deceit was tightening, and she was trapped in its threads. Suddenly, a flight attendant appeared, interrupting the exchange with a polite request. The woman smiled, slipping away into the crowd, leaving Daniel alone and visibly shaken. Emma slipped back to her seat, her mind swirling with questions and fear. The flight's end was drawing near, but the danger felt closer than ever. As the plane began its descent through low-hanging clouds, Emma stared out the window at the dark landscape rushing toward them. The city lights flickered like distant stars, indifferent to the secrets carried above. She realized with a sinking feeling that Daniel's world was more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And now, by stepping into it, she had put herself at risk. The locked briefcase, the mysterious figures, the cryptic messages, they were pieces of a puzzle far bigger than a simple surprise visit. Emma tightened her grip on her purse, the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. Whatever awaited them on the ground, it was clear that this flight was more than a journey through the sky. It was a passage into a world where trust was fragile and every secret could be deadly. The wheels hit the tarmac with a jolt that seemed to shake the very core of the plane. Passengers exhaled collectively, relief mixing with exhaustion as the aircraft taxied toward the gate. Emma's eyes, however, were sharp and unblinking. The landing was only a momentary pause in a far more unsettling journey. As the cabin lights brightened and the seatbelt signs clicked off, Emma noticed Daniel tense beside her, his fingers tightening around the armrest like he was bracing himself for something beyond the simple routine of disembarking. The briefcase lay under the seat, its presence heavier than ever in the cramped space. Emma's heart hammered. She felt the weight of every gaze around her, the silent watchfulness of strangers, the flicker of recognition in the eyes of the dark-jacketed man who had shadowed Daniel since their first boarding. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension, as if the plane itself held its breath, waiting. They moved forward in the slow shuffle toward the exit, passengers gathering their belongings with hurried efficiency. Emma's mind raced, turning over everything she'd uncovered, the secret meetings, the coded texts, the ominous exchanges of envelopes. The darkness in Daniel's world was closing in, and she was caught in its tightening grip. At the jetway, Daniel paused, glancing behind as if expecting pursuit. Emma's pulse spiked. She knew they weren't alone. Someone was waiting for them. Someone who knew the secrets Daniel carried, and was willing to act. Outside, the cool air hit Emma's face as they stepped onto the tarmac, the hum of the airport masking the quiet urgency between them. Daniel led her swiftly through the bustling terminal, his eyes darting to every corner, every shadow. Emma kept close, sensing the invisible lines of danger they crossed with each step. In a deserted hallway near baggage claim, Daniel finally stopped. His breath was shallow, and his face was pale. Without a word, he pulled Emma into a small alcove away from prying eyes. The briefcase was in his hands now, heavy and foreboding, Emma's gaze fixed on it. And for the first time, Daniel's defenses seemed to crumble. His fingers trembled as he fumbled with the lock, pulling out the small key he had hidden beneath his shirt. The lock clicked open, and the briefcase creaked as it was lifted. Inside, Emma's eyes widened. Papers, passports with different names, stacks of cash, evidence of a life far more complicated than she'd imagined. But it was the small sealed envelope tucked at the bottom that caught her attention. Daniel hesitated, then handed it to her. Her hands shook as she broke the seal. Inside was a single photograph, a grainy image of a woman Emma didn't recognize, standing beside Daniel in what looked like a tense confrontation. Written on the back, in hurried handwriting, were the words, "She knows. Watch your back." Emma's breath caught. The message was clear, chilling. Someone was warning Daniel or threatening him, but who was the woman, and why did she hold such power over Daniel's life? Before Emma could speak, a noise echoed down the hallway, a footstep, sharp and deliberate. Daniel's eyes snapped toward the sound, filled with sudden fear. "Go," he whispered urgently. "Get out of here." Emma hesitated, but the hard edge in his voice left no room for argument. She tucked the photograph into her pocket and stepped back into the crowded terminal. The noise grew louder, another footstep, then a shadow slipping into view. The dark-jacketed man. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. As she weaved through the crowd, the weight of the briefcase forgotten, but the danger very real. She had crossed into a world where trust was scarce, and every step could be the last safe one she took. Behind her, Daniel faced the man, his expression grim. The confrontation was silent, but electric, filled with years of secrets and unspoken threats. Emma's mind spun as she hurried away, the photograph burning a hole in her pocket. The woman in the picture, the warning on the back, they were pieces of a puzzle she had yet to solve. And now, the stakes were higher than ever. The airport lights blurred as Emma fled, the hum of the world around her drowned out by the pounding of her own heart. She knew that no matter what happened next, the truth was closer than ever, and more dangerous than she could have imagined. Her surprise had turned into a nightmare, and the dark secret Daniel had carried was no longer just his, it was theirs. The city lights flickered below as the plane soared into the night sky, leaving the chaos of the airport far behind. Emma pressed her forehead against the cool window, the photograph folded carefully in her hand, its edges worn from the nervous grip she'd kept since the encounter. The image of the woman stared back at her, haunting and mysterious, a silent reminder that the danger was far from over. Daniel sat across the aisle, his face shadowed in the dim cabin light. The man she had known, the pilot she once trusted, seemed distant and broken now, trapped beneath the weight of secrets that refused to lift. His eyes avoided hers, flickering instead to the locked briefcase resting on the floor between them, its contents spilling dark truths into the space they once shared. Emma's mind raced, piecing together fragments of a life she'd never been part of, smuggling, threats, hidden identities, and a woman whose warning spelled danger. Who was she? Was she a ghost from Daniel's past, or a threat lurking just beyond reach? The questions gnawed at her, and every moment of silence between them grew heavier, charged with unspoken fears. Suddenly, the calm was shattered. A sharp beep echoed from Daniel's phone, slicing through the quiet like a knife. He glanced down quickly, then froze. Emma's heart skipped as she saw a new message pop up on the screen. An anonymous number, no name, no greeting, just one chilling line. "You're running out of time." Daniel's hand clenched the phone so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He glanced around nervously, then locked the screen, his face a mask of pain and urgency. Emma knew then that their flight was no escape, it was a countdown. She reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. It was a small touch, but it broke through the wall of silence. Daniel's eyes met hers briefly, and in that fleeting moment, she saw fear, the kind that comes from knowing the past will not stay buried. Minutes dragged as the plane cut through the clouds. Emma's thoughts spiraled deeper into the darkness of what she had uncovered. The photograph, the threatening message, the secret exchanges, everything pointed to a looming confrontation she felt powerless to stop. Then, without warning, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing turbulence ahead. The cabin shook violently, passengers gripping armrests, faces pale with sudden alarm. The plane dipped and swayed, a reminder of how fragile their lives were, teetering between safety and disaster. Emma gripped the armrest, the photograph burning a metaphorical hole in her pocket. Her mind flashed to woman in the photo, the whispered warning on the back, and the shadow that had stalked Daniel through airports and flights. Whoever was behind this had reached inside their lives, and now there was no turning back. When the turbulence passed, the plane settled into a steady course, but the tension didn't fade. Emma's gaze flickered to Daniel again, whose jaw was clenched tight, eyes fixed on the locked briefcase. He seemed to wrestle with invisible demons, as if weighing the cost of the truth against the price of silence. The plane began its descent toward their final destination, the city lights coming into sharper focus beneath the thick veil of clouds. Emma's breath caught. The nightmare wasn't over. Whatever awaited them on the ground was wrapped in shadows, and the secret Daniel carried was a storm ready to break. As the landing gear deployed, a new message buzzed on Daniel's phone. This time Emma saw it. An address, followed by a single word, alone. The threat was clear. Someone wanted Daniel isolated, vulnerable, and desperate. The plane touched down with a jarring bump, and as passengers stirred to gather their belongings, Emma felt the weight of a new reality pressing down. She was no longer a surprised visitor or a curious girlfriend. She was a player in a dangerous game, caught between love and fear, truth and deception. Stepping off the plane, Emma's eyes searched the crowd. The dark figures from before were gone, but the sense of being watched lingered like a shadow. The city around them was indifferent, its neon glow masking the deadly secrets they carried. Daniel moved quickly, clutching the briefcase, his face set with grim determination. Emma followed silently, the photograph tucked deep in her purse, a reminder that some secrets refuse to stay hidden. As they disappeared into the night, Emma knew one thing with terrifying certainty. The darkness was far from over. The secret Daniel had tried to bury was alive, pulsing with danger, and now it had found her too. The flight had been only the beginning. The real journey was just starting, and whatever awaited them next would change everything.